My name is Fred Gates. I was the late Senator's district director in Minnesota, and I ran the office in Minneapolis and took care of the Senator when he was here in Minnesota. I was with the Senator at Waverly for the last 4 months of his life, and I was there when he died. And very interesting stories about how he lived and how he faced death and the courageous man that he was. One memorable moment for sure was when he came out here and somebody from Hennepin County, I think it was Sharon Sales Belton, who later became mayor of Minneapolis, but she was working with Hennepin County, and the request came from Hennepin County to have Humphrey visit one of the women's shelters in downtown or in Minneapolis. And so we went there and we visited, and Humphrey, of course, talked to a lot of the people that were at the shelter. And on the way back to Washington, he said to me, he said, "Freddie," he said, "when we get back to Washington, get the crew together and figure out something. We got to do something for the single mom and her children." And I said, "Well, there already are some programs that are going on, such as the one we just visited." He said, "No. I'm not thinking about a program for single mothers. I'm thinking about a program that will nourish the mother so that when the child is born, it will be born nourished, and that we will be able to nourish that child for the first 3-4 years of his or her life." And so we worked it out and came up with all kinds of different names, and finally one of the staff people in Humphrey's Washington office came up with WIC, Women, Infant, and Children, and that program is still alive today despite some Republican efforts to get rid of it. Is the Republicans don't talk to the Democrats don't talk to the Republicans, the Tea Party people talk to whomever they want to. It's really a sad thing. Humphrey's best friend in the United States Senate was Everett Dirksen, a Republican. As a matter of fact, he was a Republican leader. But he and Humphrey would go to lunch together in the Senate dining room frequently. When Humphrey was dying, he was out at Waverly, and we took a call from President Jimmy Carter, and Carter said to Humphrey, he says, "Hubert, I need you to do something for me." And Humphrey said, "Oh, Mr. President, with all due respect, I'm dying, and there's not much I can do for you." And he said, "Well," he says, "I want to pass this Panama Canal Treaty, and I don't have the votes." And Humphrey said, "Well, you can't count on me because I don't know that I'll be around, nor do I know that I could travel to Washington." He said, "No," he said, "I want you to talk to Barry," meaning Barry Goldwater. And of course, Barry Goldwater is the most conservative member of the United States Senate, and Hubert Humphrey was probably the most liberal member of the United States Senate. And so Humphrey said, "Don't worry, Mr. President, I'll take care of it." He hung up, says to me, "Freddie, get Barry on the phone." So I called Senator Goldwater's office. I got Barry on the phone, and Humphrey and Goldwater talked, and Humphrey said, "Now, Barry," he says, "I'm not asking you to change your vote. I know you're dead set against the Panama Canal Treaty, but the president may be able to get enough votes. But you know what? You need to settle down. He said, because Barry was working really hard at getting some of the young Republicans to vote against it. And so Barry, he probably will never admit it, but he told Humphrey, he said, all right, Hubert, for you, I will refrain from lobbying anymore. And just by a few votes, President Carter passed that Panama Canal Treaty. That there was communication, and you never see anything like that anymore. But back then there was communication between Democrats and Republicans, and there was friendships between them. It was great.
I helped him edit his autobiography. I was his press secretary, and he was my guide and my inspiration, and still is. It was a very special human being, and I'm delighted to be here for the unveiling. It's hard. Do I have 20 minutes? Really? Well, I have a lot of memories of him. I suppose not the best memory, but the most poignant memory was election night '68, when I had to go downstairs and announce to the press that he would be down to make a concession statement in 5 minutes. And I looked at him and I thought, here's a guy who's had his heart ripped out, who is really bereft, and he came down and made a nice concession speech, giving Nixon some credit that I thought he didn't deserve, but was generous and kind. And I went to Vietnam with him, and I watched him in field hospitals where they were bringing in soldiers who had been 15 minutes ago shot, and watched him weep. And
that was quite a trip.
Yes. Without getting choked up, I can't talk about it. It was really an amazing kind of excursion to the misery that people were going through. I think when Humphrey was alive and well, one thing in the Senate was bipartisanship. Republicans and Democrats talked to one another, worked for common goals, they compromised. And I think the civility and the compromise of those days are just gone. I watch it today and I get depressed because I really thought we were moving toward perfection, and it does seem to me we moved in another direction. Humphrey's interests were decency, civility, cooperation, and I just don't see much of it anymore. There's anger, there's nastiness, there's hopelessness, and I miss it.
Okay, I'm Jack Thunheim. I'm a federal district court judge in Minneapolis. I was a member of Senator Humphrey's staff from 1974 through when he died in 1978. I was one of the youngins on the staff and spent a great deal of time with him in Minnesota during that period of time. He meant everything to me, and I'm still learning every day new lessons that I learned from him I probably didn't realize at the time. Just a terrific public servant, and someone who I'm so glad we have a statue memorializing here at the Capitol. He was someone who was unrelenting in his desire to make people's lives better, to make government work for people, and he just literally reached across the aisle. He spent a lot of time with the opposite party. He worked out solutions to problems. The problems weren't any easier in his era than they are today. You look at discrimination, history of discrimination in this country, which they dealt with in the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. Things aren't worse today, but I think the atmosphere is, and he wouldn't accept it.